Hey there, Titans. In this video, we'll go over setting up filters for our queries using the Titan word-addin for Titan docgen and Titan sign. Okay, so what I have here is a couple of fields from the account, and the first thing I want to see is how can I preview this template. And another thing I'll do, so right now you can see I have the object here and I can see it, everything is fine. What I want to do here is also bring, let's say, a table of contacts, so all the contacts that this account has. So what I can do here is I'll say bring contact, and I'll say ACC contacts, give it a little comment, and let's just bring in a couple fields here. And we'll do last name and we will do email. Perfect. We'll insert that table, and notice that now nothing has changed here in my filter. So whenever you insert a new record, you want to make sure a new object from Salesforce, you want to make sure you hit the refresh button, and then you will see it. All right, so let's talk about the preview conditions. So all we got to do is, again, we're on the preview pane and we'll click filter. And whenever we're previewing, we want to see a specific record. So in this instance, I will say account ID equals to some account ID in Salesforce. And let me just pull up an account here. Let me find an account with some contact. Say this one, and we got 6 contacts. Perfect. So I'll grab that ID and I'll say account ID equals to the account ID statically. And then I'll head over to my related. This is related data, contacts that are related to that account. So first thing we've got to know our lookup, what's relating the contact to the account in our instance. And again, this could be for custom objects, anything, any relationship you have on your Salesforce. You just got to know what's linking them together. And you could do more advanced things. This is like the simplest relationship. So all I got to do is to know what my lookup is, and in case of contact, it's the account ID. And then I'll say equals my first filter, my first query to the account, and I'll say account ID. Okay, so account ID on the contact on the left equals to my first query account data. And I can select how many I want to return, so on and so forth, and I'll hit preview. And that will pull up a preview of the document, how it will look once I publish it. Okay, so I see a bunch of contacts coming back, everything looks great. I got the account data, so on and so forth. And again, if you're not working with related data, you will just use 1 or 2 filters, so on and so forth. Another thing we can do, let me just make this a little bit more complex, and what I will say is I'll work with a section and we'll do 3 levels. And notice this, I deleted it, but I can still see it here. So again, the refresh button always gives us the correct picture of what's happening on our document, on our template. So I'll insert a section and I'll bring it from Salesforce, and I'll say, let's say I want to bring a contact, and I'll say ACC contacts, and similarly there, let's just bring in the last name, and I'll say last name. And notice when I'm working with a section, I always want to choose the object that I've selected before. Like I don't want to go and switch this around. And I inserted it, and that's good. And we'll say, and now we could either insert another section, or let's say we can insert a table to bring in all the cases that are related to that contact. So I'll insert a table and I'll say I want to bring cases, and I'll say contact cases, and let's bring in the case number, and let's say description, and maybe subject, and I'll insert this table. That's perfect. And now what this will do is it will go for each contact and it will bring in whatever cases it has. Let's take a look at our filters in this instance. And what we will do here is the following. So first of all, the contacts are looking at the account. So I'll say, just like I've done before, account ID equals my number 1 query. Notice that the order of this is very important, and you can also switch the order around. I'll show you this in just a second. So whenever you're pulling related data, you want the related to be underneath parent. So whenever you're pulling from one record and then related, you always want to have it correctly. And you could also switch the order around by just dragging and dropping them, but just notice that the order is important. In our next query, all we got to do is I can say that the contact ID on the case. Again, this is the lookup that's relating the case to the contact, and I can say equals my number 2 query, and notice that I can travel up to number 1 as well since it's still under the account. So the filter is seeing what's above it, so you could use anything above where it is, and I'll say equals to contact and contact ID, and that will ultimately run. I don't know if I have any cases on these contacts, but we could just try it out and see. And we do not have, and also we can have on this table not to render if it's empty. Let me just add a quick case real quick, and I'll run the preview again. So I've created a single case for one of these contacts, and we should see it right there, and as simple as that. Now, the most important thing here is to notice that whenever you're about to publish it, doesn't matter where you're publishing it, to a flow, to a sign, to a web, so on and so forth, or to a docchain, what you want to make sure is that you look at the filters, because especially if you build the filters right in the preview, then what you could do is very simply copy to publish. But still, whenever we're working with the publish, we want to review the filter and make sure we don't have anything static. So this is bad for us. What we want to do, because it's always going to bring in the same account, so what we want to do here is use a record ID, and that will be dynamic according to whatever you're invoking it. We will pass the ID to it, and we'll bring in the data dynamically using Titan sign, Titan doc, form, flow, whatever it is you're using. So this is what we want to make sure, that our main query looks at the dynamic record ID and not at anything static. And then if you build the queries right, that everything looks at their parent object, then we don't have, in this instance, we don't have to do anything else here. But if you had anything else static, you always want to make sure you're looking at the correct ID. And this is how it's done.